welcome to our second day of tech tutorials. Our first tech tutorial of the day is by Mr. Erik Ternav, and the topic is Generative AI for Enterprises with watsonx. Mr. Ternav, you can start your tutorial.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I get a confirmation that you can see the screen. Can you? I'll take that as a yes. Okay, please, if anyone doesn't see the screen, just send a message or something. But okay, so I'm going to be talking today about generative AI, and more specifically when it comes to using generative AI technologies in a business sense. Okay. And the reason for that is that, ever since, the last 2 years, there has been a lot of hype going on. There has been a lot of conversation going on around the topic of generative AI. And, ChatGPT started the entire thing. And then after that, we've seen all of these different models that came into play. And, not long after, all the businesses saw that this is a technology that they can use for their own purposes, okay, for multiple use cases and so on and so forth, right? So they quickly also understood that it's a bit different compared to, using this technology in your day-to-day life, for personal use compared to using them in a business scenario, okay? So this is pretty much something that I'm going to talk about. Now, a couple of words from my part. Sort of like an introduction for the beginning. My name is Erik Ternav. I'm currently located, or actually where I work is IBM Slovenia. I'm currently located in Ljubljana, and I have, let's say, 2.5 years experience with generative AI. So pretty much ever since the technology was introduced, more or less. So I know quite a bit. I worked as an AI engineer in the past, and I work as a data and AI partner technical specialist. So essentially what I do is I enable our partners, so they can sell our products, basically. And I cover the data and AI portfolio, which encompasses a lot of different products, from some of which I'm going to show to you today, which are, the most relevant to generative AI. But I also cover, databases, data governance products, and so on and so forth. Now, let's take a look at the caption. So generative AI for enterprises with IBM watsonx. Okay, so if I go into the next slide, put AI to work with watsonx. So I already mentioned a couple of words before regarding, the whole generative AI fiasco that's been going on. And it's not really a fiasco, there's a lot of hype revolving it, but it's also something that's here to stay. And it's also something that's really, really useful in a business sense, or also in your day-to-day life. And it's a technology, that no one can just disregard, because everyone got a taste, even the average person. You don't have to be a technical person to play with generative AI today, right? So everyone got a taste, and they're using it for different purposes. And businesses also understand that this is something they have to implement, and if this is something they won't implement, they're gonna have a hard time competing with the businesses that do, okay? And maybe before I continue, I just wanted to, I'll just quickly explain how I envisioned the entire thing, right? So now we have 2 hours, so that's a lot of time. I also have a lot of things to talk about, right? And I'm probably going to take a break after 1 hour, a 5-minute break, because I don't want to pass out, okay? So just to, catch a breath, maybe get some water, and then we're going to continue after 5 minutes. After 1 hour, 5-minute break, and then we're going to continue until 12 o'clock, okay? Maybe some Q&A in the end, if that's even possible on this Zoom account. But if not, then you can just, contact me with any questions, and I'll address them later, okay?
Sorry for interrupting. There is a Q&A section, so people can ask questions there.
Okay, so how long do I have a Q&A in the end? How long should I, put aside? 15, 10 minutes?
It all depends on your tech tutorial, you have approximately 2 hours, so until
Okay.
12. So yeah.
Okay, I'll try to then condense everything into, so I have at least 15 minutes in the end, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna continue on. Okay, so watsonx, essentially, this is an IBM product, right? Which was let's say, an answer, a response to the generative AI story that's been going on for the past 2 years. Okay, so a lot of big players, big vendors such as Amazon, Google, um, Microsoft, everyone had their own response, right? In most cases, it was a response of a large language model, such as, I don't know, Bard, ChatGPT, and the list goes on, right? Gronk in when it comes to Twitter or X right now. So everyone wants to play the generative AI game, right? And IBM is no exception. Although IBM's approach is a bit different. Okay, so in this case, we have watsonx, which is, let's say, our go-to product right now, which is our response to the Gen AI story. And watsonx, essentially what it is, it's a platform, right? It's a platform for generative AI and also traditional AI. So it's best to view it as an AI platform where you can leverage pretty much all the magic happens, right, on the platform. And also it's a modular platform, right? So it has different components, and I'm going to be talking about these components as the presentation goes on. But there's going to be a lot of components, but these are not separate products. They're all modules on the platform, and everything is closely integrated, and it works best in synchronization. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Now, firstly, I'm going to be talking about the 3 pillars, okay? So these are essentially the 3 main pillars of watsonx, okay? And here, as you can see, here we have the platform for AI and data, right? So everything involving data and AI you can have on this platform, right? And the first pillar, probably the main pillar, is watsonx.ai. And as you can see, you can build, train, validate, tune, and deploy AI models, okay? So this is pretty much where everything happens, from building the models, tuning, validating, testing out different models, uh, using different prompt engineering, and using specific models for specific use cases, and testing out what works best and what doesn't work so well, right? So you have multiple options to choose from. And by the way, everything that I'm talking about right now, I'm gonna regarding watsonx.ai, I'm gonna show later in the demonstration. Also forgot to mention, then probably the first 30 minutes I'm gonna, of the presentation is gonna be mostly slides, PowerPoint slides. Later on, I'm gonna jump into the demonstration. I'm gonna show you also how these things work in practice, okay? But let's quickly go over the slides first. Okay, so watsonx.ai, it's the studio where all the magic happens. Then we have watsonx.data. Now, scale AI workloads for all of your data anywhere. Now, this is a data lakehouse, okay? It's a data lakehouse, it's a fit for purpose data lakehouse for multiple purposes, multiple use cases. It has different query engines, it's specialized for, let's say, you can have use cases revolving BI, AI, traditional machine learning, and pretty much all of your data can be stored here and used for different purposes, okay? More on this topic later on. And finally, we have, in my opinion, the most interesting part of the group, which is watsonx.governance, right? So accelerate responsible, transparent, and explainable AI workflows. Now, why is this interesting? This is interesting because this is one of the key differentiators that differentiate IBM compared to the competition, right? And we take here the governance part very seriously. And this is also something that I'm going to talk about a bit more in depth tomorrow on my presentation, which is going to be around, I don't know where it was, at 15:45. But essentially, I'm going to cover also, I'm going to, explain a bit here in this presentation why governance is important and why everyone, business, people, business people, research, the research sector, everyone should care about governance because the regulations are coming, right? Some of them, most of you probably have heard of the EU AI Act, which was passed about a month and a half ago, and it's going to be enforced in about 4.5 months. And there's going to be fines if people won't be compliant, let's say. Okay, so more on the topic later on. Now, let me first explain. Okay, let me first go into the so the first pillar, watsonx.ai. So I mentioned before, this is an enterprise studio for AI builders. Okay, so pretty much this is the first main pillar. And here we have let's say it's comprised of different, different components of its own, right? It has different tools that you can use. You can hear, in this case, we can see the new Instruct Lab for collaborative language model enhancement to rapidly train and release models, right? So this is something that we're still, it's still on the roadmap. It's about to be released in the end of June. I don't want to talk much about it because I still haven't gotten the option to test it. But then essentially, inside watsonx.ai, we have the foundation model library with IBM third-party and open source models. Okay, so we have, with watsonx.ai, you can leverage multiple models, on different for different use cases. Okay, so there isn't one model that fits everything. Okay, so let's say for specific use cases, for specific sectors, there are different models which are a bit smaller compared to the, let's say, the more generic models which are currently popular, such as the BAR, the big models, the ChatGPT. And those are not really the best when it comes to smaller specific use cases, such as, let's say, in the banking industry, in finance, in retail, and so on and so forth, right? Mainly because if you use a model for a large model for like smaller use cases, they can be pretty expensive. This is the first thing, and they might also answer different questions in a way that you don't want them to answer, right? So we know a lot of examples of models hallucinating and saying certain things that they shouldn't say, right? So it's important to keep that in mind, right? And the best approach to kind of like mitigate that is to use different models which are specified for the use case that you want to implement. So the foundational model library, in essence, it has multiple models you can choose from, right? You have IBM specific models, you have third-party models, and you have open source models, right? We also have collaboration, a partnership with Hugging Face, right? So further down the line, you'll be able to use you'll be able to take different models from Hugging Face and use those, right? Which this is, considering I'm from Slovenia, we usually have, apart from the large language models, right? We mainly have when it comes to the Slovenian language, and this goes for other EET languages as well, right? There aren't a lot of models that know the local languages, okay, apart from the big ones, right? But the big ones can be expensive, so further down the line, we'll be able to use, local models and so on and so forth, which will, aid in our, which will come in handy for sure, okay? So then we have the prompt lab, okay? So the prompt lab is pretty much where you can use different types of prompt engineering to prompt the models, right? So you can use different prompt engineering to kind of like decide how you would like your model to act, okay, before you use it for, let's say, for your use case, okay? So you can kind of like make sure that it doesn't hallucinate. You can make sure that it answers in a certain type of language. You can make sure that it uses a certain tone, right? And also here we have the option of let's say if we want to use retrieval augmented generation, so RAG, right? We want to, let's say, train a model on specific data that's specific for our business, we can also use that. And then through prompt tuning, we can then have, like a mini model that's able to answer specific questions. Now, for those of you who don't understand some of these words, I apologize, right? There's a lot, like retrieval augmented generation and foundational models, I'm expecting that most of you know what those are, considering this is, a DSC conference. So I apologize if anyone doesn't understand. We can have a separate discussion. I can go later on into details, but that's an apology in advance, right? So let me go to the second part, right? So Tuning Studio. This is also a studio inside watsonx.ai where you can fine-tune the models. Okay, so here you can change you can basically fine-tune the model to an extent that you want for it to, let's say, operate in the way that you want, right? So it gives you, it's specifically trained on, specific data, whether that's unstructured data, whether that's PDFs, whether that's whether that's labeled data or non-labeled data, doesn't really matter, right? But you can use, fine-tune it through the Tuning Studio. And then finally, you have the data science and ML ops part. Okay, so machine learning ops. Also, watsonx.ai, this is something that it's not only for generative AI, but it also covers the traditional machine learning part, right? So it covers the whole AI lifecycle. If you can imagine, the lifecycle for those of you that don't know, it covers, like, from the beginning of preparing the data, then creating the model, then deploying the model, and then all the way to monitoring the model and then making changes, and it goes in a circle, right? So you have the tools necessary to make sure that everything is functioning properly, and so that your AI is behaving the way that it should. Okay. So here I have the foundational models, right? That are currently available. So this is the watsonx model library. Here we have third-party models. We have IBM specific models, which are currently, we have Granite, which is specifically, let's say, for banking use cases. Then we have some other models which are specifically for different use cases for insurance. Now, I'm saying specific, let's say, in this case, for banking use cases, they were trained on banking data. Okay, so data which is jargon, slang, and whatnot in documents which are specific, let's say, for the banking sector, and we have the same for, let's say, insurance and so on and so forth, right? So these are models which are best used for those for banks and insurance companies, right? And we also have other multi-purpose models such as Llama 3, right, which is really good in the ET languages such as Slovenian, Croatian, Serbian, and so on and so forth. And then we have other models such as, the code generation models, which can generate code, and the list goes on, right? I'm going to show you later on in the demonstration. I'm going to go a little bit more into detail when it comes to this. Okay, so that's the first pillar of the watsonx stack, right? So we have watsonx.ai, we finished with that. Now let's go into watsonx.data. Okay, so this is the data lakehouse I've been talking about before, right? So watsonx.data enabled by fit-for-purpose data store to scale AI workloads. Okay, so the watsonx.data part is essentially it's this is, the thing is, the data lakehouse, it's a combination between a data lake and a data warehouse. Okay, so it's optimized for both use cases. It's not as expensive as a data warehouse, but it's, you basically have the best of both worlds, right? So in the end, the thing is, what I want you to remember from this is that it's something that you can basically you can store all of your data in the watsonx.data, right? And it has multiple query engines, which are, some are, Presto and Spark. Some are specifically for AI use cases. The other ones are Presto in this case is specifically for business intelligence use cases, and so on and so forth, right? But, we're not going to go deeper into this because, I can talk about this for hours, but unfortunately we don't have the time, right? So let's gonna jump into the watsonx governance part. Okay, so this is the part that is really important. It's going to become more and more important, and the topic when it comes to govern your AI is, especially in Europe, it's going to become more and more popular, especially once the first enforcement of the AI Act comes about, which is probably going to be in I think it's going to be in October, if I remember that correctly. But yeah, for those of you that don't know, let me first give a quick introduction. Okay, so again, this is the topic I'm going to have tomorrow, but let's quickly skim over it, right? So the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. Now, to make this short, this is essentially a set of regulations that are going to affect the entirety of Europe, right? So pretty much all of Europe is going to have to abide to these regulations if they want to use AI or machine learning into their business processes, let's say. Okay, so here we have some of the things that we're gonna have to let's say some of the topics that businesses have to keep in mind that they will have to address after the EU Act is enforced. So use high quality training, validation, and testing data, right? So they're going to have to use high quality training, validation, and testing data. Then they'll have to establish documentation and design logging features. They'll have to ensure appropriate certain degree of transparency when it comes to their AI and what their AI inputs bring to the table, and explainability and so on and so forth. Then ensure human oversight measured built in the system and or to be implemented by users. Okay, so users will have to have a certain amount of human oversight, and in a case of an audit, if some regulation agency comes and they request, I don't know, that you have to have insight, then you're going to have to give them a report or something like that to kind of like prove that you do have insight, and then you can prove that the models are acting in the way that they should be, right? So there's no the excuse that it's a black box, that's not going to be a valid enough excuse for the people that enforce the audit, right? And the consequences are going to be quite expensive. So, and finally, ensure robustness, accuracy, and cybersecurity. Okay, so these are just some of the topics, like the document is around 107 pages. You can find it online, and I suggest that that the ones that take this thing seriously read it, because this is gonna be something that we'll have to take seriously. So, oh yeah, okay. So who will be affected? Okay, so first off, the providers, the providers putting AI systems on the market within the EU, regardless of their location. Then providers and deployers, including users of AI systems located in a non-EU country, where the output of the AI systems is used within the EU. Then we have the deployers of AI systems located in the EU, importers and distributors placing EU systems on the market, product manufacturers placing products with AI systems on the EU market under their own name or trademark, and finally, providers of general purpose AI models, including large generative AI models. Okay, it's pretty much everyone that will look at an AI, pretty much every single person that will have something to do with AI, this will apply to them inside the European Union and outside, in this case, in some cases. Okay, so this is a distilled view, it's 107 pages, but I took some of the things that I thought was, the most the parts that were the most interesting. Okay, so a risk-based approach to regulation. Okay, so essentially, if you can imagine, there's going to be 4 levels to the entire thing. Okay, so if a business is going to use AI models, okay, some models might have more they might have more responsibility compared to the other ones. So for instance, let's say a model is part of a use case that will be it's, the model's responsibility will be to, I don't know, to give personal recommendations for, certain products for customers, let's say in a retail case, that even if that model is, does the prediction that it outputs is not the best, it's not the end of the world. Okay. There won't, there won't be any consequences because of that. Okay. So in this case, if we had a model like that, it's probably going to go in this part, right? So the minimal or no risk category. So, in this case, level 1. On the other hand, if we have a model, let's say that's, I don't know, giving, let's say in a banking example, right? We have a model that's giving, well, what's the word I'm looking for? When it comes to, mortgages, it's gonna it's gonna go over all the, over the banking clients, and it's going to say, okay, this person is eligible for a mortgage, and this person is not, right? So it's gonna give recommendations for different people who can apply for a mortgage or not. Now that's a pretty high risk. Right? That's a pretty high risk. It has a lot of responsibility. So in that case, that model is going to go in the third run, right? In the third level. And then, of course, in the fourth, in the second level, we have transparency risk. And then the last one, we have the last level, we have the unacceptable risk, which is pretty much not acceptable. You can't use those models, right? So prohibited because users pose an unacceptable risks to safety, security, and fundamental rights of people. Okay, so, but essentially what I want you to get from this is, different businesses are going to have different models, and different models are going to be labeled based on these, 4 levels. Okay. And then based on the level they are labeled, then they're going to also, you're going to have a level of governance on top of those models. So for the level, at the bottom, you won't need a lot of governance because there's no actual consequences if the model doesn't act right. If they're going to be high risk, then you're going to have a lot of governance. Okay. Especially if, you're going to have a lot of governance, because if it does if you don't have it governed, then the chances are of it making a mistakes, if the chances of it making a mistake is really high, right? And if it makes some mistakes, there's going to be consequences, and we don't want that to happen. So, especially for highly regulated industries such as banks, insurance, also government, most of the models are going to fall into, the top layers. So why you must care? First off, because your clients care and need help, right? So let's say most of you are, let's say, working for a company, and or some of you, at least I know for me, I have a lot of clients that want to implement AI. And, although everyone wants AI, no one is talking about the regulations, and also that there's going to be a chance that the current AI applications that are using, they will have to get rid of until the end of the year, just because of these regulations. If they won't be compliant, well, too bad. If you're going to continue using them, there will be a chance that you have to, you can continue using them, but there's going to be consequences, in terms of fines. So, currently there's a lot of tools being developed to kind of like mitigate the governance part, but more words later on, right? So essentially, if you're going to continue using the AI, you have to keep in mind there's going to be regulatory risk, reputational risk, financial and operational risk, right? So here we have 35 million in potential fines for non-compliance to the EU AI Act, or 7% of a company's total worldwide annual revenue, okay? And you have a unique opportunity to win your clients. So IBM, okay, so this is basically essentially why I should act now, right? Because, okay, so this is essentially the part where the thing is going to be enforced, okay? So clients operating in the EU need to reassess all AI-based systems to comply with the EU AI Act. Compliance against EU AI Act will be enforced according 4 risk categories, right? So the categories you were talking about before, within 6, 12, and 24 months, okay? So it's been enforced in the middle of March, so you do the math, right? So after 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months, okay? And then that's pretty much it. And by the way, yeah, again, so I mentioned this before, right? If you don't comply, then you won't be able to use AI, right? So this is not, I mentioned before, okay, so the companies that are going to be using AI will have a huge advantage compared to their competitors, right? So the competition, you know, the businesses, they will use AI. If you compare it into the businesses that don't use AI, it's, you know, it's a non-starter. You know, in the long term, there won't be any competition, right? So now we have, you know, now that leaves us with businesses that use AI, right? Which brings me to my second point: the people that will have governance will be allowed to use AI. So, you know, in the end, they'll be the ones that are going to win, right? So the businesses, they are going to use AI without the governance part, you know, tough luck. At one point, that train is going to stop, unfortunately. Okay, so this brings me to the watsonx.governance, right? So the last component, I mean, not, let's say last but not least, right? So it's not it's the last of the main 3 pillars. Okay, so we had the watsonx.ai, which is the studio. Then we had the watsonx.data, where you save the data. And now we have the watsonx.governance, where you govern the entire thing, you know, the entire process. You make sure that everything is regulatory compliant, everything is based on multiple metrics, everything is working as it should be, and that your models, you know, don't drift into some unknown area and they, you know, make predictions that don't have, you know, we say ne repa ne glave, you know, it's, you make sure that everything is behaving as it should, right? And here we see that, you know, compliance, first you have, you know, accelerate responsible, transparent, and explainable AI workflows. You know, that's the added value. Then we have compliance, manage AI to meet upcoming safety and transparency regulations and policies worldwide. Okay, so the main thing here is being compliant with the EU AI Act. Then risk, you know, proactively detect and mitigate risk, monitoring for fairness, bias, drift, and new large language model metrics. Now, watsonx.governance has different tools, right? I'm going to be showing you later on, but essentially these tools are there to kind of like govern, you know, apart from governing, staying, you know, regulatory compliant, you're also going to have different different metrics, which are you going to apply to your models, right? So in this case, we have fairness, right? You'll be able to you'll be able to monitor whether a model is fair, right? Because it has to be fair when it comes to making predictions of, you know, all the people involved. You don't want it to be, the second part, you don't want it to be biased, you know. So depending on the data, right? So also this is, you know, a lot of it falls on the data, you know, but there's also different tools here which you will be able to detect bias, you will be able to detect fairness. And if the model is going to be biased, then you also have tools that will be able to de-biasing the model, okay? Then we have drift. Okay, so what does drift mean? Drift essentially means that the model, it drifts over time. Okay, so if you can imagine, at the beginning, you create the model, you know, you're happy with how it works, but over time, as it gets fed different data, right, it can drift to an extent where it doesn't, you know, it doesn't give the predictions that it was initially planned to give. Okay, so it can go off the rails, quote unquote. Okay, so you gotta have different tools to measure that drift all the time and different alerts set up. So you get alerted, you get notified sooner, because, you know, you want to make, you want to, you know, you want to fix the model before it starts making predictions and before there are consequences. Okay, so there's the drift monitor. And then also the new large language models metrics, which are in the EU AI Act, right? So essentially watsonx.governance has tools to kind of like cover all of these, right? So next, lifecycle governance, manage, monitor, govern AI models from IBM, open source communities, and other model providers, right? So again, we have these are not, you know, specified for IBM models. You can also apply this to third-party models, to open source models, and so on and so forth. Currently, we do have some limitations of which models we can use, but you know, the plan is to cover as much as possible. Let's say I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to make any promises, but as much as possible, basically. And it's going in that direction, you know. So every single month we have more and more models we can add to the library, right, which are specific for different countries and use cases. So let me first show you, let's say, quickly go over a couple of you know, the tools inside watsonx, the governance, right? So compliance and safety AI regulations. Here we have the sort of like a dashboard. Now this is meant for business users. Okay, so these are on the watsonx governance platform, right? Or on the watsonx platform inside the watsonx, the governance module. And you have a BI overview for business line users. Then they have an overview of all the models, how they are, you know, what they're used for, how they're behaving, whether or not they're behaving as it should be, whether or not they have started to drift, or the accuracy fell, and so on and so forth, right? So they have an overview on everything. It's a simple overview, simple dashboards, and they also have alerts set up. So, you know, when a model is behaving in a non-productive way, they get notified, and then later on they can notify the appropriate technical person to do the changes, and you know, so no damage is done. Okay. And of course, this adds to the, let's say, transparency and to a huge part of the EU AI Act, which, you know, you have to have all of these things in place. Then we have other tools such as here we have, yeah, trusted, manage risk, and protect reputation. So this is a more this is a bit of a different view. This is a view for more technical people, right? And inside you can have different tools, or I mean, you have different tools which you can monitor, and you know, you can monitor different models based on accuracy, drift, and so on and so forth. You can decide which model to monitor. You can kind of like change models and so on. As my bad, not change models, but you can change different models which you want to monitor and what you want to monitor with, right? And okay, we can monitor for fairness, for quality, for drift. We can debias the model. We have an overview of pretty much everything. It's a more technical view of everything, right? So it's more for technical people, and essentially, yeah, essentially that's it. And you can also set up alerts and yeah, manage risks and everything that comes with it, right? And then also another tool inside is the lifecycle governance. So operationalize AI with confidence. We have this is like the governance, I mean the catalog part, right? So you have everything cataloged, right? So from the models, from the, whether that's generative AI, whether that's traditional machine learning and artificial intelligence, you have everything in this catalog. So all the metadata revolving the model. So you know everything that happened to the model from the beginning to the end. You have an overview of, you know, who did changes, which person was responsible for doing certain changes of the model, which person is responsible of viewing the model. So let's say, you know, you have everything on site, right? You have the metrics, you know, how the model was evaluated 1 month ago, how the model was evaluated yesterday, and pretty much every single thing that happens with the model, all the metadata is stored here, right? And yeah, everything is automated. So automate the capture of model metadata to for the facilitate management and compliance, right? And oversee model performance across the entire organization with dynamic dashboards and dimensional reporting, right? You can also create reports out of this. So it's pretty straightforward, simple to use, and yeah, an essential component. Now, also, I forgot to mention, or actually I didn't forget to mention, I have another slide here, which is how watsonx.governance can help organizations address compliance considerations, right? So this is essentially, I'm talking about mainly by the EU, about the EU AI Act, right? So considering this is going to be a hot topic, what's next, the governance, ever since the EU AI Act was, was not when it went through, but ever since EU started talking about the regulations, IBM has also been part of the conversation. Okay, so the development of what's next, the governance was developed ever since the talk started, and they kind of wanted to create a product that went hand in hand, and they wanted to cover all of the or most of, let's say, the regulations, right? So these are I don't want to get deeper into this, but let's just say that this is a product that's specifically designed to cover most of the regulations from the EU AI Act, and we're doing our best to add different different functionalities to come to the point where we're going to cover all of them before the entire thing before the EU AI Act gets enforced, right? So this is a conversation I'm gonna probably leave for tomorrow, and it goes a lot more into depth. But I see that I already been speaking for far too much, right? So I'm gonna go into the demo soon. But maybe another slide when it comes to the IDC market space, worldwide AI governance platforms, right? We can see that IBM is the leader and we're currently the leader when it comes to the AI governance tools, right? And some of the use cases. Okay, some of the use cases, let's say we had with NASA and Wimbledon, TechD, Crush Bank, and so on and so forth. We also had some other local use cases, but this is more of a, of a general sales slide. So let me go into the demonstration. Now, this is the watsonx platform, okay? So this is the platform we're talking about, all this time, right? We have the artificial intelligence platform where we have different modules on it, different tools we can use. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to use. And, like here, essentially, we have the option to train, validate, tune, and deploy AI models. We can chat with different foundational models. We can tune a foundational models with label data. We can work with data and models in Python or R notebooks. This is for the more traditional machine learning. And we have also other resources. We have, community-based resources. We have IBM specific original use case, resources to use, whether that's prepared notebooks, prepared prompts, and so on and so forth, right? So we can pretty much, even if we don't have that much of an experience with generative AI or AI in general, we can still, get the ball rolling pretty fast because there's a lot of tutorials and so on and so forth. Okay, so let me show you how you can, use different models, the thing I've been talking about before, right? So I'm going to go in the hamburger menu. I'm going to click on view all projects, or actually I think I have a project prepared for this, the demo project. Yeah, I have a demo project prepared. So, inside watsonx, you can have different projects, right? And inside the projects, here we have the different options. You can start working, you can add users as collaborators, so there's probably going to be multiple teams working on the tool, right? So, working with the tool, and based on all of these people are going to be working on different projects, right? And it's not a good idea to give certain people access to all of the assets in every project, right? It should be some sort of governance going on, some sort of access that allows to kind of like prohibit some people to have access to certain data, certain assets, and so on and so forth, right? So projects is the perfect approach to that. You can mitigate who has access. You can add different people, and so on and so forth, right? So it makes for the perfect environment. So here you can add data to work with, chat and build prompts with foundational models, tune a model label data and so on and so forth, right? Also here you have the resource usage, and similarly here you have all the jobs that are running, and finally you have the services, all the integrations, all the modules that are integrated and so on. And I'm going to show you here under the assets. Here's where you're going to have all of the, let's say, the data, all of the models, and pretty much all of the assets that you're working in this project. Okay. So I'm going to click a new asset, right? And I'm going to show you the prompt engineering part, right? So chat and build prompts. Okay, so here we have from visualizing the data to write our code, right? So we have our studio, Jupyter notebooks if we want to use in Python. Build models as visual flows. You sort of like have widgets where you can build the models. You also have automated model life cycles, right? When you can automate the creation of a model just by providing the data, right? So you provided the data and then it automates the entire thing, and you get a model which is best in algorithms and transformations, which are best suited for the data that you provided it with. Okay, so there's a lot of tools basically, but let me go into the generative AI part. So here I'm going to click on chat and build prompts with foundational models. Okay. And before I continue, there's one important thing that I forgot to mention, and I just noticed. So the entire thing is running on Red Hat OpenShift, okay, for those of you that may not know. And we have options, SaaS deployment or on-premise, okay? So, we have the hybrid cloud option. So on-premise and SaaS. And SaaS is running in the Azure cloud, in the AWS, or in this case, we have it on the IBM cloud, okay, and a couple of others, right? So just, to make that clear, you can use it wherever you want, pretty much, the entire watsonx platform. Now, okay, now currently I'm in the watsonx.ai in the studio, right? So this is the studio where I mentioned before, where you can test out different models, right? And here in the top right, we have, we're currently using Llama 3, right? But if you go into the view all foundational models, and if I clear filters, here I have different models to choose from, right? From Granite, which is an IBM specific model, proprietary model. Now this model is more of a, let's say, this is specifically for the banking industry. I mean, for the financial industry, I should say. It was trained on banking data, insurance data, and it's specific for that industry. It's for those types of use cases. Then we have code. What we have Flan, Code Llama, Mixtral, right? Mixtral is we have multiple Mixtral models, if I'm not mistaken. We have this one and this one, right? So 7 billion parameters and also 7 billion parameters, but there's a couple of differences. But essentially, Mixtral is also one of those models that's pretty good when it comes to EET languages. So it's a good thing to use, let's say, if you want to make use cases for in Slovenia or in Croatia or in Macedonia or Serbia. The list goes on, right? So you have multiple purpose models which are best suited for different languages. And let's say we're going to take a look at we have Llama 2, we have Llama 3 with different billion parameters. Of course, I'm going to use the Llama 3 70 billion parameters. I'm going to click on it, and this is the thing that we're going to use right now to showcase the entire thing. And once I clicked on the Llama, we have multiple information. We have a lot of information on the model, right? So we have model details, right? So we can see what was the training data. We have different parameters, context length, token count, how many tokens you can use in the prompt lab. Then we have also where the knowledge was cut off, right? So in the case of 70 billion was December 2023, which is not that long ago, okay? And you can see the intended use, so let's say in the case of Granite, it's gonna say, okay, so banking, insurance use cases, you have the hardware and software, training data, and the list goes on, pretty much all the information that you need from the model, what the license is, where it was taken from, what are the contributors, and yada, 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 okay? So I'm gonna select the model. And here we have, multiple ways I can actually test the model. We have the freeform option, okay? So essentially here I can type in something, right? And then wait, did I took the wrong model just in case. I probably clicked on the wrong one. So where is it? Llama 70 billion. That's the one I want, yeah. Okay, now it's good. I clicked on the wrong one. The Llama 70 billion parameter is a bit better compared to the Llama 3 billion parameter. It's like smaller, the chain, the differences are smaller, but why not take the big one? So, here we have the freeform option, right? In the case of a freeform option, how this works, I would just type in something, right? And then it will continue by generating the text, right? And then I have the structured option, which, I have multiple use cases here. Yeah, so here I have multiple use cases on the left, hamburger menu, which I can how should I put this? But depending on the use case, I click, whether that's, in this case, I have summarization, or I have classification, generation, extraction, question answering, code generation, translation, and the list goes on. I can click on one of these, and it's gonna, set up the background for, let's say, continuing on with creating the use case as easy as possible, right? It's kind of lays out the foundation, right? So here you would, add document examples of documents they want to summarize, and then you can try it out how it works, or whether or not it works, or if it doesn't, right? And then here we have the chat, right? So this is where we can chat with the model, where we can test it out and see whether or not it's working properly, and it's working for, for our, let's say in particular for the Slovenian language, let's say. So let's give it a try, right? So first I'm gonna say something in English, right? So please give me a couple, what should I type, right? So please give me more information on the data science in Belgrade, right? So please give me more information on the data science conference in Belgrade. So let's go send. Okay, so it gives me, it gives me on the DSC Belgrade conference, it gives me like a summarization. The key things that are, let's say, they're the main, it gives me like a summarization what the conference is about, and so on and so forth, right? So similar to what we're used to. Okay, so here in the top, in the right, we have different parameters. We have different parameters that we can, change, whether we want the model to be greedy or sampling, right? We can change how much freedom we give the model, right? So if you give it a lot of freedom, that means that it's going to generate, it's going to be quite creative, but the issue with that is that it can start hallucinating a lot sooner, right? On the other hand, if we want it to be more rigid, it's not going to be as creative. Maybe a couple of things won't sound as human-like, right? But you can make sure that it's not going to hallucinate. Okay, so this depends, or let's say 99% sure that it's not going to hallucinate, because we can never be sure, right? So these are some of the parameters. Where is it? So in this case, okay, I have to wait, but basically you can change the minimal tokens and the max amount of tokens. So the minimum amount of tokens that you want the model to kind of like generate the content, and also the maximum amount of tokens. If you're, let's say, not content with how the, let's say how lengthy the response is, then this is basically part of the stopping criteria. Also, we have other tools that we can kind of like, mitigate the model that we want, where the final, conclusion is that we want the model to act in a certain way, right? So, okay, let's continue on with the prompting, right? So here I ask, please give me information on data science conference in Belgrade. And I can ask, who were the speakers, or who were the speakers in 2021? And then it should probably give me a list of the speakers, right? So Data Science Conference in Belgrade 2021, it gives me the keynote speakers. And now the thing is, I'm limited with the tokens, so it's probably not going to go all the way through, right? But I would just have to change the amount of max tokens, right? And I can change it, I think the cap is 15,000 if I'm not mistaken for Llama 3. So, it would probably give me not probably, but most likely it will give me the all of the information. Right now in Slovenian, let's say I should just add, I don't know, uh, translate this to the Slovenian language. Now, also to keep in mind, right, when your konferenca znanosti podatkov Beograd, so it translates into the Slovenian language. Now, also this is not, this is like for testing purposes. Usually, this is, you would need like the prompt tuning as well, right? So for the final use cases, let's say. But even as you can see, it works pretty well without any additional prompting, right? So essentially, yeah, this is pretty much the watsonx.ai, the AI part. I could spend more time on this part to showcase, if anyone's interesting, they can contact me directly. We can decide on a demonstration, or, if you want to play around with it, I can give you a couple of links for you to do so. But I'm approaching the 1 hour, right? So I'm gonna take a 5-minute break. But firstly, let me explain what I have in store for you in the next part of the presentation. And it's now I showed you the 3 pillars. Then I mean, at least the main pillar, let's say, and then I'm gonna show you the tool to create a chatbot. Okay, so now we have everything that we need, sort of like the foundation, to creating the model. You can build the retrieval augmented generation use case here as well. Also, I forgot another thing I forgot to mention. Watsonx the data has a vector database, for retrieval augmented generation use cases. And these are basically, now I'll show you, the foundation. Then the next part, we're going to go how you have a tool where you can create a chatbot and then link the chatbot to the large language model and deploy it for different use cases and for different purposes. Okay, so yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. I'll be back at 11:05. Okay, is that okay? So, to grab some coffee, grab something to drink, go to the bathroom, and yeah, see you guys later. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so I'm gonna share the screen again. I'm gonna share the screen again, and the thing is, I figured out that, you know, the last hour I spent a bit too much time on the slides, so I'll make sure to cover everything here as brief as possible, and I get into the demonstration, you know, as soon as possible, you know. And then, you know, of course, I need to leave some time for the Q&A. So let's go quickly over the slides. I'm going to try to be really brief, because I know that most of you want to see the technology, not the actual, you know, the pictures. So IBM watsonx Assistant, you know, so watsonx, I mentioned the three pillars: AI, data, and governance, right? These are the main pillars. And then on top, we have the assistants, okay? So we have different assistants, you know, for code generation. Then we have assistants we have an orchestrate assistant, which can, you know, orchestrate different business processes. But the main assistant I'm going to be talking about today is the watsonx assistant, right? So IBM watsonx Assistant, and this essentially, it's a platform where, you know, our clients can build different, I can't say chatbots, because there's a term called virtual agents. You know, virtual agents, it's more of a transactional bot. Okay, so if you can imagine, a chatbot is a bit lower compared to a virtual agent, because it's not that a simple chatbot it's quite straightforward. It's, you know, it's not that complex, and usually not a lot of, you know, most people don't have a nice experience with it, right? So virtual agent, it's important to make that distinction, because a virtual agent is quite a level ahead, right? And I'm going to explain shortly why that is the case. Okay, so let's go into it. So, you know, customer service is the number one generative AI priority of CEO. Okay, so when it comes to generative AI, most use cases are related to customer service. Okay, so you can imagine, you know, in a form of virtual agents or chatbot, right? So I'm going to, although I did make the distinction, from here on out, I'm going to say chatbot just because it's a word that most people are familiar with. Okay. So chatbots, you know, for either for external purposes or for internal purposes, are you know, the actual thing that the clients and, you know, the employees get to work with, right? So although the three pillars I mentioned before are in the background, you know, you still kind of have to bridge that gap to the end user, and that's the assistant, right? So you have AI, the three pillars in the background, you have the end user, and then the assistant is the one that bridges the gap. Okay, the watsonx Assistant. So in this case, you know, have multiple use cases, whether that's for customer care, such as, let's say you have an assistant. Let's say a retail example would be, you have an assistant, a virtual agent that's able to answer questions revolving different products. Then in this case, you can use the assistant to kind of like register, reset your passwords. It can buy certain types of products. It can put different products inside your let's say inside your well, what's the thing called again? I forgot what it's called, but you know, where you save your items inside the shopping cart. That's the case, right? So the end goal is to have everything done through normal language with the assistant. You don't have to scroll anything on the web page, right? Everything can be done to the natural language, and the assistant does everything for you. Okay, the chatbot does everything for you. In the case of a banking use case, I don't know, you can apply for a mortgage through natural language. You can apply for credit. You can, pay different bills and so on and so forth, without the need of, talking to an actual live person. You can do everything from the assistant. Now, of course, there's certain topics that you can do through the assistant, because there's a high quality of um, regulations, such as, let's say, for mortgages. Some person is going to have to check that one out. Eventually, it can be all the responsibility of the AI, but you get the point, right? So even for telco, in this case, for telecommunication companies, they can have certain use cases to reset the router for the client, then to apply for different packets, and the list goes on and on and on, right? So essentially, this is a use case. This is a product that can be applied everywhere. no matter the industry, for external purposes and also for internal purposes, such as, support for HR, for the HR desk, or, an IT service desk, and the list goes on. Okay. So it's basically the top priority of CEOs right now. Okay. So that's why it's important. Right. But at the same time, I also touched a bit about this topic a while ago, right? And it's on the topic that you can't just deploy any model, okay? And the reason for that is if you deploy a model that's not really in line with what you wanted to say, that's not in line with the information of your business, that's not in line with, all that it doesn't have any limitation, then it can for sure cause an issue, right? And in this case, we have multiple articles that happened in the last 2 years when it came to the models either hallucinating, saying something they shouldn't have, and then the consequences were quite high, right? So with watsonx Assistant, you can make sure that you can deploy assistants, right? That you can deploy virtual agents that don't they don't abide by the rules. Okay, so you can make sure that they won't say anything they shouldn't have, and then you can get a lawsuit and so on and so forth, right? So this is something the companies have to be really, really careful with when they decide to go with certain generative AI technologies, and also there's the data problem, right? So most models that are currently on popular, you don't know where the data gets sent. Okay, so let's say I'm not going to name any names, but whatever you type inside the model, it gets sent to, let's say, the US. All of the data gets sent to the US or somewhere else, and that's not really, first of all, it's not in line with the EU AI Act, and also the second part is that it's not most companies can afford it, right? Especially when it comes to personal identifiable information. A bank can afford to share, personal data of their customer to get it sent to the US, or same with insurance, government as well, and pretty much every sector that uses, that has customer data. So pretty much everything, right? So people have to take, businesses have to take that really seriously, right? And yeah, okay, so it's built on, watsonx Assistant. You can build your own virtual agent, and the background, let's say, is handled by watsonx.ai, right? So the large language model part, the thing I've been talking about before, that's, the foundation models I showed in the last hours. You can connect them with watsonx Assistant. They can be integrated, and then I don't know, through retrieval augmented generation, you can kind of have you can create a virtual agent that has a large language model in the background, right? So this is what you can do with watsonx.ai, but that's not all you can do with watsonx Assistant, because watsonx Assistant is not only a question answered bot. It's more of a transactional bot, and you'll understand when once I show you everything that I have in store, but it's a step further, right? So here again, I'm not going to repeat myself, but you can bring your own models which are best suited for different use cases. Okay, so watsonx.ai is IBM conversational AI platform that delivers the intelligence unified customer and employee care. And here we can see it's like a simple architecture of how the entire thing works. Here we have the customer, right? And the left we have the customer, and the customer, let's say that the customer sends a message through some of these channels. Okay, these channels come out of the box. Okay, so the integration is done, in 5 to 10 minutes by, a couple of clicks. And here you can have, the virtual agent can be deployed on the web. You can access it through the phone, through the web page. You can text with the assistant. You can you have the integration with Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Slack. Then you also have Teams, And these are all just the things that come out of the box, right? You also, if you have any other integration you'd like to do, everything can be done pretty seamlessly, right? So then once the message goes through one of these channels, it gets to the assistant, and then the AI decides whether, which path to go from here on out, right? Whether, it identifies the message, and then based on the content, it decides, okay, what would be the best way to respond to this message? Would it be, one option would be to send to answer with the large language model in the background. That would be one option. The other option was to be, if you have an integration with some sort of database, to retrieve some content and give a proper, a certain type of response. Then the other question was be, if the input from the user is something, I want to reset my password, right, on the website, then you can use the integration with an application in the background, and then the user gives more information, and then you reset its password, right? And the list goes on. And also you have the option to connect it to a contact center, to a live agent, okay? So in practice, how these things work, you create a virtual agent, and let's say it covers 95% of all the requests and messages from your users, right? So in a case of let's say you have a chatbot that's deployed on your webpage, right? It's able to handle 95% of the queries, okay? There's also going to be those 5% which are a bit specific, whether that's because they don't get asked a lot, or if the language is not, if you have things happen, and usually there's a small percentage of the messages that the assistant is not able to resolve, right? And in that case, it's not a good approach to have, like, to spend time and waste the customer's time, and for him to start getting nervous and so on and so forth. So you can connect it to a real life human agent, which is in the background, and then it can continue on with the conversation from there on out, right? This is also comes out of the box. So, and throughout the entire team, you have a journey analytics, right? We have analytics on the platform where you can see whether or not, based on different KPIs, based on different graphs and the conversation history, you can see how the assistant is performing and whether or not the users are okay with its performance, because that's quite crucial. I'm going to explain later on what I mean by that. Okay, here are the five, let's say, differentiators when it comes to differentiating the watsonx assistant compared to the other technology, okay, that's currently on the market. Okay, so it's accessible and scalable AI that you can rely on with your customers. Okay, so we have larger language models in the background, and also watsonx assistant has its own model that's, able to orchestrate what the best resolution method is. Then we have assistant that can tell, show, and do. Okay, so it doesn't only give answers to questions, it can also show, how to resolve an issue, and it also can do something on the part of the user. Okay, I'm going to show this later on. Then it can deliver consistent and personalized experiences with flexible explainability. Now, it can connect to all channels, different channels. It can integrate with pretty much everything. We have a lot of integrations outside of the box, and we have also, even if the integrations are not outside the box, that can be seamlessly integrated by, a couple of clicks, basically. We have the REST API integration, and even if the client has, their own personal service desk, making the integration is not an issue, right? Then we have orient your team around true customer outcomes. This is the analytics part. And then build and iterate quickly with no code and LLM powered authoring. Okay, so the no code part is really interesting because it's simple to use. Comparing it to the other competition, it's made for line of business users. You don't need to be a data scientist. You don't need to be a technical person to use it. It's simple. Is as simple as it gets, right? Which of course then later translates into the total cost of ownership. Okay, so you don't need an army of developers to maintain the chatbot. Okay, you need a couple of line of business users who know the content they want to train the chatbot on, and that's it. No Python skills, no, JS skills or whatever. It's simple to use, and I'm going to show you later on in the demo. Okay, so these are the five things that I want you to remember, to keep in mind, right? So AI, large language models, model infused chatbot. Then we have, it doesn't only give answers to questions, it can show and aid the users in their, let's say, tasks, and it can also do certain things on behalf of the user. Then it can integrate with anything. It can integrate with pretty much everything, and a lot of things come out of the box. And even if they don't, they can seamlessly be integrated to multiple options. You have the analytics part. The analytics part is really important because you have an overview on how it's behaving when it comes to talking with your customers, and whether or not your customers get their problems and tasks solved. And then finally, you can build and iterate quickly with no code and LLM powered authoring. It's easy to use, and it's the total cost of ownership is low, because you can have, you don't need an army of developers. And here it's a bit more specific, going into let's say the tell, show, and do, right, in the second pillar, but I'm gonna skip this, gonna show you in the demo rather, right? Then you have the integration part, how you can integrate it with editing. Here you have, the integration stack that comes out of the box, and as you can see, there's a lot of information here. But pretty much any technology, whether that's CRM system, whether that's different channels, whether that's service desks or whatever, everything that's popular right now and that's mainly used, you can make sure that it's part of the out of the box integration part, right? But even if it's not the end of the world. It's simple to integrate. The analytics follow everything from the beginning to the end when it comes to the conversation with the customer. Again, I'm gonna skip this, gonna show you later on. And it can be built extremely quickly with no code. Okay, the build approach we have for the integrations, for the chat, it's straightforward. It can be more straightforward. You don't, it's natural language, and it's built through actions. We're also the only, let's say, the only company that has the action approach. Maybe a couple of more, but for certain, when it comes to the building part of it and maintaining it, we're the because of our approach, we're the cheapest one for sure, because you don't need to have any technical skill. It's straightforward. Okay, so let's jump into the demonstration. Okay, the session expired, but let me first. So for those of you who are interested, right, you can go to lendyr.com, right? So lendyr.com, and this is a web page that's specifically designed for us to, let's say, for us IBMers to showcase the power, the potential of watsonx Assistant. Okay, so I'm not going to spend, this is just to show the potential of what it's, what watsonx Assistant is capable of, right? So here you have different, guides on depending on what you would like to do, right? So the tell, do, and show, you can see how, the system tells you something, how it does something on behalf of the user, and how it can also show him what exactly to click on the website to get to the destination that the user wants to get, right? So then you have the generative AI and large language models capabilities, the build experience, and ... right? But I'm going to show you the web chat essentials right now, right? So Lendyr is a fictional bank. Okay, so it's a fictional bank designed specifically to showcase the capabilities of watsonx Assistant. And again, every one of you can go and check it in, feel free to test it out. But in this case, here at the bottom right here, there was a circle where we had the assistant, and here it says, "Hi, I'm a virtual assistant. How can I help you today?" Right? So after 15 seconds of me actually joining the web page, the bubble opened, and now I can, this is for the purpose where, if I actually don't see him when I'm on the app page, so you get this notification, right? And once I click here, I can see that the window opened and it says, "Hi, I'm the Landier assistant. How can I help you?" Go to know, and you have different options from which to click, right? Or also I can type in a message or whatnot, right? Now, although this is in English, it's important to state that everything can be done in Slovenian, it can be done in Croatian, Serbian, and ... like all. I'm not certain, but I'm gonna say most EET languages are covered, because I might have missed something. I'm not 100% certain of that, but most EET languages are covered. But it should be tested. I mean, here it knows only English, but essentially on the platform, you can build it with any language. But I'm pretty sure that it covers all language. I'm not sure how it works with it works with Cyrillic, that's for certain, but I'm not sure what the combination would be. But it works, but I haven't gotten the chance to try it. That's the thing, because I saw it in action. Okay, so let me begin the tour. Right here on the left, you have a tutorial where you can follow, and you can follow this tutorial. And then here on the right, you're gonna see all the capabilities. Okay, so let me begin tour. Okay, so this is the first part, is launcher and chat home. I'm gonna go next because we've already seen this. Okay, I'm gonna show you the video integration. Okay, so if I click here, try it out, right? So enter the following. What is Landier, right? If I type here, what is Landier, and click on send, I'm going to get the video integration, right? I get a generic response, and I can see the video integration inside of the assistant.
So what do we do at Lender?
Okay, I'm not gonna, for obvious reasons, I'm not gonna let it, I'm not gonna watch the video, but essentially this is a good, showcase to see what's possible, right? Integrating videos is quite straightforward, and it, for certain promotions, for certain businesses, or some guidebooks or whatever, whatever comes to mind, you can use the videos inside to kind of give a briefer explanation, a more straightforward explanation to the customer, compared to, let's say, the just simple text, right? Then we have the iframe and Google Maps integration, right? So I just type in "find nearest Landier branch," and your response says, "Please share your location with me." After accepting the browser prompt, it may take a moment to retrieve your location and share it. And I said, okay, I've shared my location. Click here to see the convenient branch based on your location. Okay, the IBM location. And it gives the IBM Chicago office and the office that I'm currently located in, right? So the IBM Chicago office is the HQ, right? And the BOC group, this is where I currently located in Ljubljana, in the building of the IBM office, basically, right? So here it says, "Please note, since Landier is not a real bank, and please, that does not have any actual branches, this is the IBM office closest to your shared location." Okay, so now this is a good use case, I don't know, for different branches, let's say for a banking industry, or for a bank or something like that. They can Google it with they can integrate with the Google Maps, and it would show different branches inside of the city, where the customer can go and apply for a loan or something like that. The same with other sectors, telco, whatever you'd like, media, so on and so forth. So here you have to be a bit more creative, and the possibilities are endless. Then content carousel. Okay, so this one's good, right? So what are some credit card options? If I ask it what are some credit card options, it's gonna give me a couple of visuals. Take a look through, and I have three visuals, three credit card options that I can apply, right? I have learn more, and I also have the apply for preferred, right? So if I click on learn more, it's going to take me to the part of the page where the credit card options are held. Or if I click on apply for preferred, it takes me to the part of the page where I click, where I can actually apply to the thing. Okay. So this is a case of a banking use case, but if it can be a little bit more creative, let's say for retail, it can give you certain products. For telco, it can also give you certain packets, what your, telephone packet might be, or so on and so forth. You can also make sure that, this is good for, the commercial part, for certain ads and stuff like that. And you can also make it so that, once the customer is talking with the assistant, that a new ad comes every, let's say, 3 minutes, and that, you have an advertisement inside of the assistant so that the user gets notified. And you can also make, if you have, the option for the user to register on the web page, you can also register through the assistant, and then the assistant knows who he's talking with, right? So you can give personal recommendations, and the possibilities are quite endless, and we have a lot of use cases that are quite interesting on the topic. Then journeys is one that's quite interesting, right? So the thing that I've been talking about before when it comes to showing something, the assistant to show you something. Let me give you an example of journeys, right? So I'm going to type in, I don't understand the charge I saw on the app, right? And the assistant says, I can help with that. Do you want me to show you or tell you how to view charge details and file disputes? I'm going to click on show me. I have the option to tell me or show me. I'm going to click on show me. So I click on show me, and it says, let's dispute a charge. And I click on get started. Okay, so this is whether or not I'm happy with the assistant. Let's go with yes, submit. And okay, the showing option is in process, right? So as you can see, the chatbot window, minimized. And here I have a window that says what I need to do from here on out. It's basically showing me what exactly I need to do, right? So here I have charges are listed on the transactions page. Click your profile photo in the top right corner of your screen, and then click transactions from the menu. Click on transactions. And as you can see, once I click on the profile photo and click on transactions, the content also changes because it notices that I did the action. Okay, so here you can view your charge details like merchant name, transaction date, and amount charged. Scroll through and identify possible fraudulent listings. So let's see, I don't know. This one looks like a fraud. I want to dispute it. And I disputed the charge, and now, it changed the content as well as gave me a video of what I actually need to finish to file this.
Our lender.
What I need to finish to file a dispute. So that's, I can click on done, and then, I did my part, and now I can continue on with the conversation. Deep linking. Okay, so this is the case when it comes to, if you, let's say my name is Kate. Okay, so I open my Outlook, and this is the email I got. Okay, this is the email I got from my bank. In this case, it's lender. And they say, hi, Kate, just a reminder that your bill is due in 5 days. Visit this link to make your payment. Okay, so this is the UI from my mail, And if I want to make a payment, this can also be done. So I click in, visit the UI to make a payment, and the deep linking works. So because I clicked on the link from the email that I got, it sent me directly to the web page. I'm already registered, right? And I can continue the conversation of paying the bill because it knows the content, okay? And here's the message. One moment while I retrieve your bills and balances, which bill would you like to pay, right? So I have, it knows which credit cards I have, and I can just, pick one of the two, and I can pay my bill, Again, this is for a banking example. You can also use this, let's say, if you get a recommendation for, your product is currently available, would you like to buy it, or in retail or something like that, you got to be creative. So depends on the industry, right? But this is if you're creative, you can use this in every industry. You also have some some best practices. So if anyone's interested, feel free to talk to message me later on, right? So ask clarifying questions, search, suggestions, these are multiple functions that add to the frictionless experience, as we like to call them, right? So frictionless experience is to give the idea to the user that he's talking to a real life human being. Okay, that's what we mean by frictionless experience. So no friction, the conversation doesn't stop. Okay. And you have suggestions that kind of like there's AI that monitors whether or not the conversation is going smoothly. And if it if there's a roadblock, then the AI gives a couple of suggestions. Well, you might be interested in certain topics and different topics and so on and so forth. Or there's the functionality ask clarifying questions. So if the AI is not certain, if the confidence level for the AI to not give a proper response, it's smart enough to give ask a questions for clarification, so the user can give more input, and so that the watsonx assistant can give the confident proper response, right? Multiple functionalities. This is just scratching the surface. But let's go, the live agent escalation. In a case of the user wants to, talk with the live agent, right? You have here at the bottom right, you have the question mark. Here we have suggestions, or you connect to a live agent directly, or you can also type in, in this case, increase credit card limit, right? And credit card limit, it can be increased through the watsonx assistant because it requires, someone has to be responsible. So in this case, the answer is, I'm afraid credit card limits are beyond my scope, but let me connect you with someone who can assist you further. And then I can connect to agent. And then the conversation continues on, right? So in this case, Jonathan was connected. And Jonathan continues the conversation through his, service desk. And he also gets sent all the information, all the history of the conversation, so he knows where we left off. So he doesn't, he doesn't ask the user, repeating questions, which is not a good idea, right? And that's pretty much it when it comes to this part. Now, for the final, I do have 10 more minutes, right? So I do have 10 more minutes, and I'm going to show you how the entire thing looks from the perspective of someone that's building the chatbot and so on and so forth, right? So I mentioned, okay, we covered the large language model part. We covered the, let's say now the functionalities when it comes to the potential integrations and so on and so forth. And this is how the entire thing looks in the background, right? So this is the IBM watsonx Assistant platform, right? And as you can see, the moment I come to the page, I get, multiple tutorials, get started, create a conversation, share with your team. You can get started in a matter of 30 minutes, right? You also have learning resources, videos, best practices to plan your virtual agent, to a build guide, refine your assistant, test and deploy it, and then preview, draft, and publish it live. Okay, so, and also integrating with large language models, which is as straightforward as it can be. And I can't emphasize that a lot, So let's go, here we have in the hamburger menu, we have the build part, we have the deploy and the improve. Okay, so let's go into the build part. Okay, so this is where you build the dialogue for the integration part, for doing certain things on behalf of the user, or you can also build the dialogue, just to simple answer the questions. Right, and the building of the dialogue is built through these actions, we like to call them, and actions are best imagined as certain tasks. Okay, so one action is a task. Let me give an example. Right, if I create an action, right, I'm gonna name it, what does your customer say to start this interaction? Okay. So let me first explain what actions are. Action is sort of like a task, right? And once a person sends, a message, then it's on the assistant to allocate the proper action. Let's say if the person sends, the message from the person is, I want to reset my password, then we have an action that is password reset. And once the action gets allocated, then it guides the user through the set of steps for it all the way to the bottom when the action is completed, right? So the set of steps might be, I don't know, okay, good, you want to reset your password, please give me a username, then give me your new password, and the list goes on and on and on, right? And the last step would be, thank you, your password has been reset, and it uses an integration with the backend application, and it resets the password, right? Or a different action might be, let's say, if the confidence level to answering the question is not that high, you can backpedal to a large language model, right? So it's sort of like the large language model can give the answer. Or if even the large language model doesn't give the answer, then you can backpedal to asking a clarifying question or give different suggestions which are relevant to the conversation you had beforehand, okay? Okay, so let me give you an example of what, okay, so here we have new action. What does your customer say to start this interaction? Let's say I want to reset my password, right? So this is the conversation, message rather, right? And here there's, best practice is to put five different, what's the word? Five different phrases that kind of like mean the same thing, but they're not worded correct in the right way, right? So another would be, I want to reset my password. I'd like to change my password, right? So that would be another option. But essentially to give them, best practice is five. So you kind of give an idea, this is, you could use different dialects and so on and so forth. You can use slang because in practice, that's how people usually ask questions. Not everything is grammatically correct, not everything is in the right order, but people tend to, make mistakes and so on and so forth. And also, then, it's good to have, as much examples here as possible. But at the same time, even if you don't have a lot of examples, it can tolerate a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Mistakes. Right. So, here give an example of what's going to be, what the message is going to be that is going to trigger this action. Okay. And this is the first step. So the first step is, okay, what do we want the assistant to respond with? And I'm going to type in, okay, good, please provide me with your username. So this is the first step, right? So I click on save. And then as I'm making changes, I have a preview message here where I can actually test the changes if they're, operating as, as I would like them to operate. So here I would take, okay, let's type in, I want to reset my password. And it gives me the response, okay, good, please provide me with your username. And this is the response here, right? And then later, this you can kind of imagine, then I would just click on next step and you can, go all the way down to the end. Here you can, click on continue to next step, use an extension, which is the integration. You can integrate it with the application and reset the password, right? So here I typed, I want to reset my password. I can also type this in, I don't know, my reset want. So my password recent want, right? So it's something, and it still understands and it says, okay, good, please provide me with your username. Okay. So it still understands, although, even a normal person would have a hard time understanding my password reset want, right? So this is an example of how we can tolerate a lot of let's say, mistakes. Now we have the preview page. We can change, change the themes. Everything is out of the box. Don't have to code anything. We can change the color. We can change the logo. We can change the content. We can change the launcher. We also have a mobile version. We can change the content. Yeah, again, so, this content, the name of the assistant, so on and so forth. We have the out-of-the-box live agent integrations. So Genesis, Nice in Content, Twilio, Salesforce, Zendesk, and bring your own. Okay, so even if it's your own personal service desk solution, it's not an issue. Okay. Suggestions, security, embed. Okay, embed on your website. This is the only line of code that you're going to need to put the assistant into production. And also keep in mind that, except for integrations, of course, for integrations, you'll have to know a bit of code, right? But apart from that, everything can be built without any coding. So this is the total cost of ownership, how, let's say, cheap it is when you take everything into account, right? So resources, more things, to learn about, there's enough of those. So you don't have to, watch any YouTube videos and so on and so forth. So you have a lot of those here, right? And then let me go to the analytics part. You have analytics. This is the thing I've been talking about before. Now, let me give a quick story we had with one of our clients, right? One of our clients, about a year ago, they said they were using the chatbot a lot, right? That their users were using the chatbot. They were surprised at how many people use their chatbot, right? Because they implemented it. It was a telco customer. And the thing is, they only had a view of how many people use the chatbot, but the issue is that that's not a good enough view, because if the chatbot is not sophisticated, if, it does a lot of mistakes, that it can harm your business. Okay. And that was definitely the case for the chatbot they had implemented, because the chatbot they had implemented knew how to answer 10 different questions. And if you formulated something a bit differently, then, it would get confused. And essentially, the final product would be that the user was just wasting their time and getting frustrated. Okay, so that's not what we want. And the analytics part aids to that, because you get an overview of whether or not, the customer is happy with interaction, and how often the problems get solved, and so on and so forth. So here we can see that, we have different KPI. We can change, the time frame, of course, whether that's week, the live environment, draft, and so on and so forth. We have different KPIs. You can see how many unique users use the talk with the chatbot. Then you have different conversations have been had, how many requests. You can see the action recognition, you can see the action completion, right? So how many times the actions were recognized, this is basically how good is the chatbot of allocating the right action to the right message from the user. And action completion, how good is the chatbot to finish the task all the way down to the end, right? So if, let's say, this is 95%, that's good. Most of the things that, most of the issues that the users are facing were solved through the assistant. If this is low, then we have an issue. We have to change the dialogue a bit, right? And here you have most frequent actions. So these are topics that usually, the tasks that are the most frequent from the point of view of the conversation between a user and the Watson assistant. So you kind of get an overview of what are the things that bother your customers the most. We have the least frequent actions, so the topics that don't come up often, and we have the least completed actions. Now, this is an important part, because the least completed actions are the actions that we've created, but don't go all the way down to the end, right? So they come, let's say, all the way down to the middle, and then they're not completed. So the problem doesn't get resolved. Now, this is a good thing to have an overview with, because you have to change these actions, and fix them so that they can resolve in the future. Okay, so here, least completed action, there should be a list here, but considering I created the demo, like 5 minutes ago or 20, there's no list. But we have the most frequent actions. We have, I want to reset my password, right? This is the only action I created for this demo. And, but in a production environment, you would have a list here, and list here, top. So if I want to have more information, I want to reset my password, I can just click on it, right? About this action. And I can see all the conversations that triggered this action, right? And we can see how they were planned out, and so on and so forth. Okay, I have a more in-depth overview and see what the issue is. And then also regarding the conversation of the analytics, I have a deeper, insight on the I have an insight into every conversation between the users and the watsonx assistant, right? So all the conversation, when they were held, how they ended, and so on and so forth. And if I click on this request, more detailed conversation, how much time it took, requests. I can keep going for hours, but considering we don't have hours, let me quickly go briefly over the integrations. Again, multiple channels. They come out of the box. You can SMS, Facebook Messenger, Genesis Bot Connector, Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp with Twilio, Slack, and you can also bring your own. And multiple extensions. You can connect it, integrate it with pretty much everything through REST APIs. Here you have watsonx, the thing I was talking about with large language models. The integration is seamless. It can be done at like half an hour. For me, it's like 15 minutes, considering I'm have a bit of experience with it. So this is briefly about the okay. So we went over pretty much everything that I wanted to go over with. I promise, I have 3 more slides and then I'm over, right? So, watsonx Assistant, we have inside IBM, we have more than 40,000 client engagements. This is like a really hot topic right now. And it's a really hot topic on the West. And, usually Eastern European countries tend to, we need about a year, depending, but about a year to kind of like, get on board with certain for some things a bit more, but for Gen AI, it has been such an impactful technology that currently now is the first, let's say in EET now there's a lot of conversation going on, even regarding virtual agents, so on and so forth, which was the case 1 year ago for, let's say, the US market, right? So now is the perfect time for the EET market, Eastern European territory. So we have a lot of client engagements and more than 10,000 clients using watsonx Assistant right now, right? And for different purposes, whether that's for external, customer experience transformation, for external purposes such as a chatbot for let's say for clients, and internal purposes to give, let's say, the knowledge to, let's say, code generation or for other purposes for inside of the company, right? And we're also a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, right? So here you can see IBM, and it's one of the best, let's say, chatbot technologies out there. And we've been a leader ever since the entire Magic Quadrant started for conversational AI platforms. And this is the total cost of ownership I've been talking about. This is one of the products that pays for itself, right? And, the total cost of ownership is exponential, right? At the beginning, you spend a little bit of time, not a lot, and, doing the POC, preparing everything and so on and so forth. But then once you get to a level that the assistant knows how to handle, 95% of all the questions and requests from the user, then you spend much time. You save a lot of time for your employees and you save a lot of money. Okay. And the return of investment is infinite. So if you don't believe me, I said, a lot of the things today, they're a bit hard to believe, but on that topic, inside IBM, we have a plan for our customers. They can get started. We can offer, I don't know, a client briefing, a customized demo, or even a pilot for free. Okay, so a pilot for free means that we use the technologies I mentioned today. We create a pilot, which usually spans from 2 to 4 weeks, right? We had different people from all over Europe, which are and also Eastern European territory. They cover the territory, and we showcase the technology. We create a chatbot. We create, train different large language models on top of customer data, and then we showcase the value so that the customer can see, oh, yeah, this works for me as well, right? And then, of course, we're quite confident then they're going to be, happy with the experience and so on and so forth. So then we have a higher chance of closing. So this is our, let's say, free investment for our clients and whoever's, willing to take part. So with that, I finished my presentation. I promised I promised I'll leave 15 questions. 15 minutes for the questions, but it is what it is. But yeah, so if there are any questions, you can ask me right away. If not, you can just message me via I don't know, Slack or LinkedIn, and I'll get to you as soon as possible.